Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we start these conversations, we're looking back at history, or we're looking sideways at a trend that's happening over a few years. But today feels different.
It really
We
does.
are planting a flag right now, in the immediate present.
There's a specific urgency to the material we're looking at today. It feels less like an analysis and more like a live report.
Exactly. For everyone listening, I want you to just take a second and look at the date. It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026.
Which is wild to even say out loud.
It is. And we are deep into the mid-20s now. The things we used to talk about as future tech AI, robotics, autonomous systems, they aren't on the horizon anymore.
No, they're not coming. They are here.
They are here, they are in our pockets, they're in our cars, they're in our streets, and more importantly for today's discussion, they are in our defense systems.
And that is the context we just can't ignore. We are living in the era of deployed AI. And that changes the fundamental physics of how global power works.
So to help us navigate this, we're diving into a really fascinating piece of writing. It's a blog post from a blog called Barackface.
Which is a great name, by the way.
It is a great name. And it's written by an author named Paramendra Bhagat. Now, I have to admit, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on the author himself before we started recording. Did you catch his background?
I did. It's one of those details that you might just skim over, but it really frames everything he's about to say.
It really does. The source notes him as Barack Obama's first full-time volunteer in New York City.
Think about that for a moment. Go back to that time, 2007, 2008.
It feels like a different century. But when you think of that early Obama era, you think of grassroots organizing. You think of knocking on doors, shaking hands, that very human-to-human connection.
Right. It was all about hope, community, the power of people coming together.
Yes, the power of people. But then you look at what he's writing about today in 2026, and it seems like a 180-degree turn.
It does. He isn't writing about community organizing in the traditional sense anymore. He is writing about high-tech warfare, agentic AI, and this concept of a new MAD.
The new MAD. It sounds like a summer blockbuster movie title.
It really does.
The full title of the post is The New MAD, AI, Robotics, and the Spectrum of Peace. And that title alone, there is so much to unpack right there.
Oh, absolutely.
I think for most of us, when we hear MAD, we immediately think of the Cold War.
Mutually assured destruction. The big red button, duck and cover drills.
Right. And we think of it as a binary. It's a simple on-off switch. You are either at peace, sitting in your backyard having a barbecue, or the missiles are flying, and civilization as we know it is over.
That was the 20th century model. That was the binary mindset we all grew up with, this idea that we were always one phone call away from the apocalypse.
But the aha moment in this piece, and it really is a major shift in perspective, is that technology has fundamentally broken that switch.
It's not a simple toggle anymore.
No. He says it's a dimmer knob.
A dimmer knob. I love that analogy. It's so perfect for this.
Isn't it? But what does that even mean in practice?
Well, the argument here is that AI and robotics have turned war and peace into a spectrum. You can have a little bit of war. You can dial up the conflict to, say, a 3 out of 10.
You can have a medium amount of destruction. It's not just everyone dies anymore.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that changes everything.
I'm not sure if that makes me feel safer or, frankly, a lot more terrified.
Well, that is exactly the tension we are going to explore today. Because if the cost of going to war isn't the end of the world, does that mean we are going to have more war? Just, smaller, more manageable wars.
Or does this new technology create a different kind of safety, a different kind of equilibrium?
So the central question for this deep dive is really about trust, isn't it? In a world teeming with autonomous drones and these algorithmic defense systems, does the technology guarantee peace through fear? Is it just a better, more sophisticated mousetrap?
Or, as the author suggests, is there a completely different path, a spiritual path, that we are ignoring at our own peril?
It's the ultimate question of 2026, I think. Do we put our faith in the silicon, or do we put our faith in the soul?
Okay, I love that setup. So here's how we are going to tackle this. First, we need to set the baseline. We have to revisit the old MAD, the Cold War doctrine, to really understand why it's becoming obsolete. We need to understand what we're losing.
Right. You can't understand the new without understanding the old. Then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this new MAD. What does graduated deterrence actually look like?
We're going to talk about drone swarms, cyber-physical attacks, and the economics of modern warfare. It's going to get very real very quickly.
And then we have to talk about the loophole, the big one, The source calls it the irrational actor.
This is the part that keeps me up at night. Seriously.
As it should. That is the glitch in the entire system.
And finally, we'll pivot to the solution Bagat proposes.
Yeah.
He uses this beautiful, simple analogy of a small town that I really want to dig into. And we'll wrap up by looking at the author's broader worldview, his books, his philosophy, because he's predicting everything from liquid computing to, well, a spiritual apocalypse.
It is a wild mix of hard sci-fi reality and deep theology. You don't see that every day.
You really don't.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump in. Section 1, the legacy of the old MA. Let's go back in time for a second. The Cold War, mutually assured destruction. We throw the term around a lot, but what did it actually mean for the psychology of the world?
It was a psychological prison, really. The source uses this fantastic phrase. It calls it a grim guarantor of peace.
A grim guarantor.
Think about that for a second. Grim guarantor. It implies that our safety, our day-to-day existence, was bought at the price of absolute world-ending terror.
It was a binary world. There was no nuance.
None. As the text says, the choice was either total restraint or apocalyptic annihilation. There was no middle ground. You couldn't just, launch one nuke at Moscow and expect them to just send a strongly worded letter back to the UN.
No, if one flies, they all fly. That was the understanding.
And that absolute nature is what made the logic work. It was simple, it was terrifying, and it was absolute. And the key to it all, the most counterintuitive part, was vulnerability.
Wait, unpack that for me. How was vulnerability the shield? That sounds backwards.
It sounds completely backwards, but it was the core of the doctrine. We were safe precisely because we were defenseless, because the U.S. couldn't stop a full-scale Soviet strike, and the Soviets couldn't stop a full-scale U.S. strike. Both sides were held hostage by the other.
So it's like two people standing in a room full of gasoline, and each is holding a lit match.
Perfect analogy. That shared vulnerability is what prevented anyone from striking their match. It was, at its heart, a suicide pact.
I won't kill you because if I do, I die too. Simple as that.
Correct. But, and this is a huge but that the source points out, this didn't mean there was peace. Not in any real sense of the word. It just meant there wasn't total war between the superpowers.
Right, the conflict didn't just vanish into thin air.
No, it got displaced.
Yeah.
It's like squeezing a balloon. If you squeeze the middle, that direct conflict between Washington and Moscow, the air has to go somewhere else, so it bulged out into the sides.
Into proxy wars.
Exactly. Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, the coups in Latin America, the ideological battles in Africa, all that conflict was channeled into these smaller but still incredibly brutal arenas because the main arena was rigged with explosives.
It was a fragile equilibrium. That's the phrase the text uses. It feels like we were walking on a tightrope over a volcano for 50 years.
And somehow we made it across. Mostly. But here is the pivot point. The source argues that we have stepped off that tightrope. We are on completely different terrain now.
The date, February 2026, matters because that binary world is gone.
It's eroding rapidly.
And why? What's causing the erosion?
Two things. The players have changed, and the pieces on the board have changed. It's not just Washington and Moscow staring at each other across the Bering Strait anymore.
Now you have the U.S. and China, sure, but you also have what the text calls middle powers.
Right. Think about nations like Israel, India.
Even others, like Turkey or Iran. Powers with significant military capability, significant tech capability. They have their own agendas.
They absolutely do. And the catalyst for this change, the thing that's really shaking up the board, isn't nuclear physics anymore. It's the massive global investment in AI-driven robotics and autonomous systems.
Which brings us to the core of the blog post, this idea of the new mad.
Yes.
The author uses this phrase that I've been turning over in my head. Mad every step of the way. I have to be honest, when I first read that, I couldn't quite visualize it. If Old May was total destruction, what on earth is mad every step of the way?
It's a great concept, and it takes a minute to wrap your head around. Think of the old Mehdi as a ladder with only 2 rungs. You are on the ground, which is peace, or you are at the very, very top, which is Armageddon.
And there's no way to climb up slowly. You either stay on the ground or you jump to the top, which means everyone dies.
Exactly. The new Mehdi comes in and builds 1,000 rungs in between. It fills in every single step on that ladder. The source calls it a transition from all or nothing to graduated deterrence.
Graduated deterrence. Okay, so give me a scenario. Let's make this real. It's 2026. Tensions are high between, say, 2 of these middle powers. In the old days, they might just posture, move some tanks around, and hope for the best. What happens now?
Okay, well, let's look at the tools the source mentions. We have swarms of drones. We have Cyber-physical attacks. We have autonomous weapons. So let's say country A wants to put some pressure on country B.
Okay.
They don't launch a missile. That's too 20th century. Instead, they launch a sophisticated AI-driven cyber attack on country B's entire banking infrastructure, freezes all transactions, causes chaos.
Okay, so that's hugely damaging. It's an act of war, but people aren't dying in the streets.
Yes. Annoying, damaging. But not deadly, not in an immediate sense. Now, in the old world, country B would be stuck. What do you do? Do we launch a missile over a bank hack? Of course not. So maybe they do nothing and they look weak.
But in the new May-D world,
In the new AD world, Country B has an entire menu of proportional responses available. Their own AI defense system analyzes the attack, calculates the economic and social damage in real time, and instantly launches a response.
and what would that be?
Maybe it's a swarm of small autonomous drones that flies across the border and disables a specific power plant in Country A. Not by blowing up, but by, say, melting the transformers at a key substation with a directed energy pulse.
A tit for tat.
A perfect, algorithmically calibrated tit-for-tat. The drones don't level a city, they just turn out the lights in the capital for 48 hours, the cost is inflicted, a message is sent. But nobody or very few people die.
So it creates this spectrum of deterrence. Low intensity, medium intensity, high intensity. A whole range of options between a sternly worded email and nuclear winter.
Yes. And the theory, the big hope behind this, is that because you can deter at every level, you don't need to threaten the end of the world to maintain stability. You can threaten a power outage. You can threaten to disrupt their shipping lanes with autonomous submarines for a week.
But here's the question that immediately comes to my mind. Doesn't that just mean we are going to have constant low-level wars? If the cost of conflict is lower, won't states be more willing to engage in it?
And that's the paradox of peace that the source talks about. It's a fantastic point. The argument from the author, though, is that this system actually makes war prohibitively expensive at every single level.
Prohibitively expensive. How it sounds cheaper than building an aircraft carrier.
But it's not about the cost of the drone. It's about the certainty of the retaliation, the economic deterrent.
Okay, break that down.
Well, imagine you are a head of state in 2026. You are sitting with your generals. You're thinking about launching that cyber attack on the banks. In the old days, you might think, they probably won't do anything. There's ambiguity.
You could maybe get away with it. Plausible deniability.
Exactly. But in the world of the new Amity, with algorithmic certainty, that if you launch that attack, their automated defense system will respond. It's not a guess, it's an algorithm. And your own advisors can tell you, sir, if we do this, their system will retaliate against our port, and the damage will be approximately $5.2 billion in repairs and lost trade.
So I have to do the math right there in the Situation Room. I'm going to lose $5.2 billion to gain.
What if
A temporary disruption, maybe it's just not worth it.
Exactly. The logic is that the new Mamadi monetizes conflict instantly and with terrifying precision. It turns war from a gamble of geopolitics into a bad business deal. And the idea is that major powers will avoid these direct clashes because the cost is just too high, even if the world doesn't end.
So peace doesn't come from a treaty. It just emerges. The source calls this peace emerging incrementally, a layered stability.
It's a different concept of peace. It's not the absence of war, necessarily. It's a structural result of these interlocking technological layers of deterrence. It's like a mesh, a very, very expensive mesh. If you push against it, the mesh pushes back with the exact same force.
And you're saying the building blocks for this are already here. The source points to predictive analytics and lethal autonomous weapons.
They're not just here, they're being deployed. We see this in the news every day in early 2026. We see systems that can predict a missile launch before it even happens, based on satellite data and troop movements. We see drones that can loiter over a battlefield for days and make their own targeting decisions without a human pilot in the loop.
So the infrastructure for this new MADIS, this global mesh of deterrence, is being built as we speak.
It is. It's happening right now.
It sounds incredibly seductive. There's a logic to it that's very appealing. We replace the messy, emotional, scary nuclear standoff with a clean, calculated, almost sterile algorithmic standoff.
It is seductive. It promises control. It promises a world governed by logic and math instead of passion and ideology.
But I'm sensing you're about to tell me it's not that simple.
It is never that simple. Because any system at all that relies on pure logic has one fatal flaw.
Which is?
It assumes everyone playing the game is logical.
And that brings us to the glitch in the system, the irrational actor.
This is where the entire beautifully constructed edifice of the new MAD starts to shake. The system, as we've laid it out, relies on rational actors. States like the US, China, India, Germany, they are at their core bound by self-preservation.
They have populations to feed, economies to grow, they have something to lose. They don't want to lose $5.2 billion.
Exactly. They are invested in the game continuing tomorrow. But what about the outliers? The source specifically points to non-state actors, terrorist groups, criminal syndicates, nefarious individuals.
The people who don't have a $5.2 billion port to protect. The people who just want to watch the world burn.
Or people who believe they're on a divine mission that completely transcends economics. Or a lone hacker who just wants to cause chaos for the thrill of it.
But wait, didn't we have terrorists in the Cold War? Al-Qaeda existed then. Why are they a bigger, more fundamental problem for the new MADSEA?
It comes down to one critical, game-changing factor: barrier to entry.
Okay, let's get into that. Barrier to entry.
Think about the nuclear era, the old MEB. If you wanted to be a player in that game, if you wanted a seat at the big table, what did you need?
A Manhattan Project.
You needed a Manhattan Project. You needed uranium enrichment centrifuges. You needed ICBMs, ballistic missile submarines. You needed billions upon billions of dollars and thousands of the world's best scientists.
So a random terrorist group operating out of a cave in Afghanistan couldn't really threaten global stability with a nuke. The barrier was just too high.
Exactly. The barrier was sky high. Now, let's fast forward to today, February 2026. The AI era. What do you need to be a player in the new May?
Well, the source mentions open source algorithms, 3D printed drones, off-the-shelf hardware.
And that is the terrifying shift. The barrier to entry has completely collapsed. You can download sophisticated AI targeting code from GitHub. You can print the drone chassis in your basement with a hobbyist 3D printer. You can buy the microprocessors and the servos from a commercial electronics website.
The text calls this the democratization of destruction. That is a chilling, chilling phrase.
It is, because it means that the power to cause state-level damage, the kind of damage that used to be the sole province of superpowers, is now potentially in the hands of individuals.
So let's use an analogy here. The critique of this system, then, suggests it's like moving from a high-stakes poker game to a casino full of slot machines.
That's a fantastic way to put it. In the old MED, it was a poker game with a billion-dollar buy-in. Only the superpowers could even get a seat at the table.
Right.
In the new MED, it's a giant casino floor. And anyone with a quarter or a 3D printer and an internet connection can walk up to a slot machine, pull the handle, and potentially hit a jackpot of pure chaos.
And this creates what the source calls a granularity risk.
Yes. The spectrum has gaps. The new MAD is a brilliant system for stopping State A from launching a coordinated attack on State B. It's designed to stop a tank division or a missile wing or a fleet of warships.
But what does it do against the lone hacker?
What did it do against a lone hacker in an apartment in Tallinn who decides, for his own reasons, to shut down the water treatment plant in London? The system isn't looking for him.
Or a rogue environmental group that decides the best way to protest is to deploy a swarm of cheap, plastic, 3D printed drones into the commercial flight path of a major airport.
Exactly. The massive, expensive, multi-billion-dollar AI defense systems are looking for incoming enemy missiles. They might not even register 100 plastic drones that look like birds on radar. That is the asymmetry of it all.
Small forces can provoke massive escalation without facing any of the existential risks that bind the major powers.
Because if a terrorist group launches that drone swarm, who do you retaliate against? You can't deter them economically. They don't have an economy to sanction.
They can't threaten to shut down their power grid. They don't own one.
They're ghosts in the machine. And the new MAD, for all its sophistication, doesn't have a good answer for ghosts.
So the verdict in the source is pretty grim on this technological path to peace. It says it doesn't eliminate conflict, it just redistributes it.
It changes the shape of conflict, and it creates a costly stalemate. We are spending trillions of dollars on these AI defense webs, these autonomous systems, but we're still fundamentally vulnerable to the guy with the 3D printer in his garage.
It's like we've built a fortress with 50-foot thick steel walls, but we left the basement window unlocked.
And we gave everyone a map to the basement.
Which brings us to the pivot. And this is where Paramendra Bhagat, the author, really shows his hand. He's not just a tech analyst. He's not just describing the problem. He's looking for a deeper solution.
He is. He rejects the madness, and I think he uses that word deliberately, of relying on machines to save us from ourselves.
He argues that this technological equilibrium is too expensive, It's too precarious, and it is ultimately doomed to fail because of that irrational actor problem we just discussed.
It's a dead end, a very high-tech, very expensive dead end.
So he offers an alternative path, and the heading in the article is Peace Through Spiritual Awakening. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
When I hear the phrase spiritual awakening in a serious discussion about autonomous weapons and geopolitics, I get a little skeptical. It sounds nice, it sounds lovely, but is it practical? Is it a real solution?
It's a completely fair skepticism. We are trained to look for hard solutions to hard problems, tech solutions to tech problems. But hear him out. He grounds this very lofty idea in an analogy that I think is really effective: the small town.
Okay, let's walk through the small town analogy.
So he asks you to imagine you live in a small town, maybe a town of 500 people in the Midwest, or a village in the mountains somewhere. You feel safe there, right?
Generally, yes. You leave your doors unlocked.
But why? Why do you feel safe? Is it because there is a SWAT team stationed on every front porch?
No, of course not.
Is it because there are AI-powered surveillance cameras in every living room watching everyone's move, running predictive policing algorithms?
No, that would be a dystopia. That wouldn't feel safe at all.
Exactly. That wouldn't be peace, that would be a prison. He argues the reason a small town is safe is internal, not external. It's safe because neighbors trust each other.
They know each other.
They know each other. They don't steal from each other because they'd have to look Mrs. Gable in the eye at the post office the next day. If someone gets sick, the neighbor brings over soup, not because a rule says they have to, but because it's the human thing to do.
It's a social contract, an unwritten one.
It's more than just a contract. It's a shared consciousness, a sense of community. The source defines this as a collective shift where empathy, ethics, and a sense of shared humanity prevail over self-interest. You don't need the police because you have the relationship.
Okay, I get it on a village level. That makes perfect sense. I know my neighbor Bob, so I don't attack Bob. But how in the world does that scale to 8 billion people? How does the small town model work when my neighbor is a country halfway across the world with a different language, a different religion, a different government, and a history of conflict with my country?
That is the challenge. That is the multi-trillion-dollar question. The author isn't saying it's easy, he's saying it's necessary. He's arguing that the new IMAD, the technological police state model, can't scale because it's too brittle. It can be broken by one irrational person. The only thing that truly scales, he argues, is trust.
So is he saying we should smash the computers? Is this a call to go back to the farm and abandon technology? Is he a Luddite?
No, and this is crucial, and it's the part that the expert in me really appreciates. Bhagat is a futurist. He writes about agentic AI. He is not demanding Luddism. He sees a new role for AI and robotics in this awakened world.
A different job for them.
A completely different job description. If their job isn't to be weapons in a perpetual arms race, what could they be doing instead?
Okay, so what does that look like? If the drains aren't for killing, what are they for in this vision?
Connection. He envisions AI as a tool for fostering global communication, for breaking down language barriers instantly so that we can actually talk to each other as humans. He sees robotics not as soldiers, but as tireless aids in humanitarian efforts.
So instead of a drone swarm bombing a power plant, you have a drone swarm delivering medicine and food to a flood zone in a remote area.
Exactly. Or instead of an AI calculating the economic cost of a missile strike, you have an AI managing global resource distribution to ensure that no one goes hungry, which would remove one of the primary causes of war in the first place: resource scarcity.
So the tech becomes a tool to serve the awakening rather than the tech serving the fear.
Precisely. The core argument is that peace must stem from the heart, not the arsenal. It's a fundamental shift in where we locate our security. If you build a peace based on arsenals, you are in a permanent arms race. You always need a better shield, a faster missile, a smarter algorithm. It never, ever ends.
But if you build it from the heart, if you build it on mutual understanding and trust,
Stability becomes organic. It becomes enduring. It's self-sustaining because people are motivated to maintain it.
it's a beautiful vision. I'll give them that. But it's also a very specific worldview. And I think to really understand where this is coming from, we need to look at the man himself. We need to dig into the context.
The meta-analysis. I love digging into this stuff because the messenger is often part of the message.
It really is. In the sidebar of the blog, there's a list of his published books. And looking at these titles, it's like looking at a split personality. It's fascinating.
It really is. On one side, you have the hard tech focus, the futurist. He's clearly got the technical chops.
Yeah, titles like The AI Marketing Revolution, Liquid Computing, And this one that really jumps out, given our conversation, agentic AI set to explode in 2026.
Let's pause on agentic AI for a second, because that's a key term. For the listener who might not be deep in this world, what does agentic actually mean in this context?
Right, so most of the AI we interact with today, like a chatbot, is reactive. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer, it waits for your prompt.
Agentic AI has agency. It has its own goals. You don't give it a specific command, you give it a broad objective, an objective like maximize the profit for this company or defend this nation's computer network from all threats.
And it figures out the steps on its own. It acts proactively in the world to achieve that goal.
Which makes it infinitely more powerful and in a military context, infinitely more dangerous. So the author clearly understands the bleeding edge of the technology. He knows what's coming down the pike, but then you look at the other titles on his list.
And it's a completely different world. Kalkism, the economic and spiritual blueprint for an age of abundance.
And this one, The Last Age, Lord Kalki, Prophecy and the Final War for Peace.
Okay, so this is fascinating. He self-identifies as a Kalkist. What is Kalkiism?
So this is rooted in Hindu eschatology. Kalki is the prophesied 10th and final avatar of the god Vishnu. He is supposed to appear at the very end of the Kali Yuga, which is the age of darkness, strife, and discord that we are said to be in now.
And his purpose?
His purpose is to destroy evil, to end the darkness, and to usher in a new age of truth and righteousness, the Satya Yuga.
The final war for peace.
Exactly. So when the author Bhagat talks about a final war for peace or a new mad day, he isn't just talking about geopolitics. He's viewing current events through this very specific ancient prophetic lens. He believes we are in a cosmic transition from an age of darkness to an age of truth.
That puts a whole new spin on his call for a spiritual awakening. He doesn't just think it's a good idea, he might believe it's prophesied.
Yes. He sees the technological singularity, this explosion of agentic AI and the spiritual singularity as two sides of the same coin. They are happening together, forcing a choice.
And his scope is clearly global. The source itself includes a Hindi translation right there in the post-Naya MAD. And he's constantly referencing news from India, Israel, Nepal.
It reinforces that he sees this as a planetary shift. The middle powers, like India, aren't just strategic partners in his view. They might be the spiritual epicenter of this coming change.
Speaking of the world in 2026, let's ground ourselves in the reality of the day because the blog post gives us a perfect tool for that. There's a news ticker in the sidebar. And reading these headlines, wow, it really paints a picture of the world we're in.
It's the zeitgeist of February 2026. And it is messy. It's chaotic.
First headline that caught my eye. Hegseth says Defense Department will cut ties with Harvard.
I mean, just think about what that means. The Pentagon, the U.S. military, divorcing itself from the oldest and arguably most prestigious university in the country, that suggests a deep institutional rift, a culture war that has actually broken the institutions that used to bind the country together.
The military-industrial complex and the academic elite are no longer on the same team.
Not at all. Then we have this one. Japan adopts new carbon reduction targets. Boost nuclear?
Which on the surface sounds like a standard energy policy story,
Yeah.
but think deeper.
Think about the context of 2026. We know that the AI data centers, the server farms running these new agentic AIs, are consuming massive, unprecedented amounts of power.
So Japan, a country deeply, deeply traumatized by the Fukushima disaster, is being forced back to nuclear power just to keep the lights on and the AIs running. That's the energy reality of our world.
Then there's this, Europe's next hegemon. The perils of German power.
So the old geopolitical ghosts of the 20th century are waking up. The post-war order in Europe, which seemed so stable for so long, is shaking.
And we also have Owaisi calls out Assam CM Himanta Sarma.
Which points to the intense internal political and religious tension within India, one of those key middle powers.
So when you look at all these headlines together, these deep rifts in the U.S., the energy desperation in Japan, the power struggles in Europe, the religious friction in India, it reinforces the author's point perfectly, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It shows a world that is fracturing. The old man stability, that bipolar order, is gone. The world is too chaotic, too multipolar.
And we are trying to plaster over these deep human fractures with the new mad, with drones and algorithms and automated systems. But the author is looking at this news ticker and screaming from the rooftops, this isn't working!
We are trying to solve human problems with robot solutions.
And the robot solutions are getting very, very dangerous, and they're not addressing the root cause.
So, let's bring it all home. Let's synthesize this. We've looked at the trap of the old MAD, that prison of fear. We've looked at the seductive logic of the Numedi, this idea that we can engineer a spectrum of peace.
It's the Band-Aid solution. It's so tempting. It promises control. It promises that if we just have better surveillance, faster drones, smarter code, we can force the world to behave itself.
But we've also seen the glitch, the fatal flaw, the irrational actor, the guy with the 3D printer who doesn't care about your beautiful logical algorithm.
Which leaves us with the author's proposed solution, the superior path, the cure.
Wisdom, not weaponry.
The author's final plea is to make a conscious choice. Choose wisdom over weaponry. Ensure that our incredible technology serves enlightenment, not just enforcement.
It sounds idealistic. It sounds, maybe to some, impossible. But when you look at the alternative he's laid out,
When the alternative is a world where anyone, anywhere, can potentially have a weapon of mass disruption in their pocket, idealism starts to look like the only pragmatism left on the table.
that is the thought I really want to leave our listeners with today. A question to really mull over. If the barriers to destruction are collapsing, if the new Mandi means anyone can play the game of war,
Can any amount of technological deterrence actually work in the long run? Or is the small-town trust model, the radical idea that we simply must stop wanting to kill each other, the only truly survivable path for the human race to make it to the 22nd century?
it forces us to ask, are we safer now because the threats are smaller and more frequent? Are we better off with 1,000 paper cuts than one giant sword hanging over our heads?
Or were we, in some strange, terrifying way, safer when the threat was so big, so absolute, that we never, ever dared to use it?
It's the question of our time, and the answer, as the author makes clear, won't come from a machine.
Paramendra Bhagat, writing on the blog Barackface in February 2026. A truly thought-provoking piece.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Stay safe out there. And maybe get to know your neighbors. A little more trust can't hurt.
See you next time.